So I have a question for you this morning. Do you think most people live with hope? I want you to seriously consider that question. Do you think most people live with hope? I've got a yes over here. What do you think people hope for? Continuance of life. That's spoken by someone in the medical field. Yeah. What do you think people hope for? And why do people lose hope? Because there are those that do. There are those that do. Have you known anybody who seems to live with a strong sense of hope despite a life that is filled with challenges? Have you known anybody like that? And you look at them and you think, it makes no sense that they're that hopeful. Look at what they face. And yet they seem to have this internal hope and peace no matter what life throws their way. How do you think that they're able to live with that hope? What do you think? It's an important question because I can tell you in the 25 years that I've been a pastor, the thing that have brought persons to my office most often is, how do I find hope in the midst of this terrible situation? It's a question that people live with and struggle with. So I'm going to back into the answer to that question as I see it. How many of you enjoyed English class in high school? We have a few. How many of you detested English class in high school? We have a few of those too. We are going to consider, Judy read a passage for us today, and in my Bible that passage, Romans 5:1, starts with the word therefore. So think back to English class. What type of word is therefore? Is it a noun? Is it a verb? What is it? Therefore. It is a transitional word, and it's actually an adverb. And so I put a slide up this morning that says other ways to say therefore. So then, thus, hence, in line with, accordingly, consequently, resulting from, we're not going to read through all of those, but Chrissy is right. It is a transitional word, meaning, because of this, then that. Because this exists, then this follows. Now, Judy read the this follows part for us. But I'm going to back up a little bit and look into the because of this part. Because if you read the book of Romans, who wrote the book of Romans? This is a brownie point question. Be brave, say it loud. The Apostle Paul. That's right. Paul had some really deep theological thoughts. This is one of them. And Paul says, because of this, then that. Well, the this that he's talking about, before we get to the hope part that Judy read for us, the this part of that is because of what Jesus has done for us. Because we have been reconciled to God through the work of Jesus Christ on the cross, because we have been reconciled to God following Jesus' way of living. I have my bubbly soda with me this morning because my throat is scratchy. Me. Because Jesus has put us right with God, then we can have hope. But does hope go poof and it's there? How many of you have instant hope at your disposal? You can think hope and it materializes. Well, good for you if that works, because it doesn't work for me. I can think hope and yet I have to struggle to get there. But through faith in Jesus Christ, all of us have an avenue to get to hope, no matter what circumstances we face. Now, I think the Romans passage that Judy read for us this morning is one of the most profound and difficult passages in the Bible. And let me tell you why. Because look at all the stuff you have to go through to get to hope. As far as the Apostle Paul, there's a process that we need to go through to get to hope. And it's a maturing process. Because if we want hope in deep, dark, troubling circumstances, we have to walk through it. We can't walk around it. Have you ever tried to sidestep what you know you need to face? How's that work for you? Not so great. Yeah. I've walked with a few of you through those difficult times. You've watched my husband and I walk through some difficult times, or roll through them in the case of my husband. There's a process to it. So I want to ask you another question, because we're going to build a case here. We're going to be in a court of law here today, and we're going to build a case. As you look back in your life, when has your faith increased the most? As you look back in your life, when has your faith increased the most? In the good times? So there are some good times that are faith increasers. I love the birth of a baby. Whether we're giving birth or whether it's someone we know giving birth, the birth of a baby has the opportunity to help us grow because it requires us to become other-focused. Have you ever had a newborn in your house? Whose needs come first when there's a newborn in the house? Yeah. How much sleep do you get? Does it matter if you don't want to get up? You become other-focused when there's a newborn in the house, or maybe you have recently entered a relationship with someone. Maybe you've gotten married and you find out what it's like to negotiate living together. In our house, when we were first married, you know what the big debate was? Whether the toilet seats stayed down or up. Down or up. The first time that I got up in the middle of the night and the seat was up and I wasn't paying attention and I landed in the toilet water, guess who threw a hissy fit? And guess who gave in? The toilet seat is now down at our house and has been for more than 40 years. Are you impressed? However, as much as the good times help us develop our character, I submit that it's the trials in life that have the power to either undo us or redo us. The trials in life have the power to either undo us or redo us, because life is hard. Life is messy. Just about the time we think we've got our agenda figured out, guess what happens? Something goes wrong. So what happens with our faith when it gets tested by the messiness of life? This very week, I had a conversation. Let me take a drink before I tell you about it. This week, I had a conversation with the mother of a 19-year-old young man who was diagnosed with cancer right about the time he graduated from high school. He was leading the life of a carefree teenager, looking forward to graduation. He had a trip planned after graduation with his buddies, and he was diagnosed with cancer. And in the last year, he has spent more time in the hospital than out of the hospital. And she told me this week that he had a scan hoping that they would find him cancer-free, and they did not find him cancer-free. So he is starting the process all over again. This mom is in agony for her son. And she looked at me and she said, and by the way, it's not anybody that any of you know, but she looked at me and she said, "You're a pastor, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And she said, "I've believed in God all my life, but now I'm struggling with my faith. Why would God give my son this terrible disease?" You ever been in her shoes? Maybe the circumstances are a bit different, but all of a sudden you find yourself in that place where what you believed about God doesn't make sense in this circumstance. And so you start asking questions. Now, I've shared with you before, but it's been a while, that when I was about 30 years old, I had that whole series of questions coming up, and I almost walked away from God and my faith. And guess what? God's big enough to handle that. God is big enough to help us through those times of struggle so that we can again find our place of hope. But that is a process. For me, it took a year. So if you're wanting instant mashed potato hope, you're not likely to find it, because there's a process to it. But the Apostle Paul, in this passage of Romans, makes a bold claim, because he said that our struggles and our suffering should be viewed as building blocks of hope, not enemies of hope. Wow. When your 19-year-old gets cancer, that's a building block of hope. When your husband ends up a paraplegic, that's a building block of hope. When your relationship falls apart, that's a building block of hope. Does that make sense? Why would that make sense? Because our struggles have the power, I believe, and I think Paul's writing supports this, our struggles have the power to teach us lessons that we don't learn at any other time. And I think the first lesson that we learn is priorities. How many of us tend to get distracted in life? What do we get distracted by? Anything and everything. You're exactly right, Judy. We get distracted by our material possessions and acquiring more of them. We get distracted by our jobs. We get distracted by politics. Anybody distracted by politics lately? Yeah. We get distracted by all kinds of things that take us away from God and away from what is of basic importance in life. We also, by our struggles, learn perseverance. Do you know that some of the people I hold in the highest regard, are people of deep character because they have walked through some of the worst stuff you can walk through. And they've not let it make them bitter, they've let it make them better. Know anybody like that? Man, I value those folk. And I also think that struggles teach us possibilities. They teach us priorities, they teach us perseverance, and they teach us possibilities. I was researching for this sermon this week, and a pastor by the name of Bryce Morgan made this statement, and man, I think this is so profound. He says this: as we go through struggles, there is a provenness of character. Our struggles teach us to hang in there like nothing else does. You know anybody that you consider to have a shallow character? What can shallow character get us wrapped up in? All this stuff that doesn't make a whole lot of difference, right? Shallow character can get us wrapped up in stuff that in the frame of eternity, it just doesn't matter. Our struggles teach us our priorities, how to persevere, and that God is a God of possibilities. You know, a situation may not resolve itself the way we want or hope, but that doesn't mean that there cannot be good come out of it. Do you know that passage of the Bible? It's a little later in Romans. Romans 8:28 says, God can and will bring good out of any situation for those who love the Lord. Do we have any weightlifters here? Any of you have any of you spent time at the gym lifting weights? I think you can go overboard with that. I see some pictures on Facebook and I think, why would anybody really want to look like that? However, if you're a weightlifter, how do you build your muscles? Do you go to the gym and you bench press 400 pounds to start with? How do you build your muscles? You build it through repetition with increased resistance. All right? So you lay down on that bench and you put small weights on. And you do that for a while. And then you increase the weights, and then you do that for a while. And you build up your tolerance, you build up your strength to build weights. Think about this. Hope, like muscle, will not get strong if we don't use it. God grows hope in us when we understand that faith has the capacity to carry us forward into any future that is in front of us. Faith in God. What happens when we rely on our own strength, our own wisdom, to get us through a situation? Doesn't work, does it, Megan? At some point, our own strength, our own wisdom is going to fail us, or that of somebody else that we're relying on. I don't know if Dr. Chamberlain's back there or not. He's not here today, so somebody can tell him I said this. Did you know that physicians practice medicine? They don't always get it right. Now, I think Dr. Chamberlain is in the upper echelon of those who get it right. But guess what? Even physicians who have practiced for decades don't always make the right decisions. They're practicing medicine. Only God gets everything right. And I believe that our struggles help us to step outside of our own strength and put our faith in God who gets it right. God's timing, God's wisdom. We can place our hope in all kinds of temporary stuff. Anybody fill up this week? I filled up yesterday at Kroger and had a number of cents off, and I still feel like I need an artificial leg to pay for that bill. We can place our trust in our material resources. We can place our trust in the stock market. We can place our trust in the government. We can place our trust in our job, our family, our friends. All of those things can only go so far to help us through life, because life is hard. But when we have faith in God through Jesus Christ, we can use our suffering as a means of drawing closer to God and maturing in character. Because hope, that type of hope that develops by walking through things rather than around them, tells us that we're not alone, that God is with us, that God cares for us, and that God is going to provide everything that we need. There's a song on Christian radio right now that I really like. It's called Weary Traveler. And I would enjoy it if we could close the thoughts of this sermon with the words of that song, Weary Traveler by Jordan St. Cyr.
Weary traveler, beat down from the storms that you have weathered. Feels like this road just might go on forever. Carry on. You keep on giving, but every day this world just keeps on taking. Your tired heart is on the edge of breaking. Carry on. Weary traveler, restless soul, you were never meant to walk this road alone. It'll all be worth it, so just hold on. Weary traveler, you won't be weary long. No more searching, heaven Heaven's healing's gonna find where all the hurt is. When Jesus calls, we'll lay down all our heavy burdens. Carry on, oh, weary traveler, restless soul. You were never meant to walk this road alone. It'll all be worth it. So just hold on. Weary traveler, you won't be weary long. No, you won't be weary long. You won't be weary long. Someday soon we're gonna make it home. 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 Gonna make it home. Weary traveler, restless soul. You were never meant to walk this road alone. It'll all be worth it. So just hold on. Weary traveler, you won't be weary long. Weary traveler, you won't be weary long. Weary traveler, you won't be weary long.
I love the message of that song because it tells us that what we're going through now, through faith in Jesus Christ, will always end in victory. I invite